Hi players, bonjour from Geneva. My name is Asaf and welcome to my channel Easy Board Games. Today we're going to have an explanatory playthrough for War of the Ring, the card game, and its expansion, Fire and Swords. A huge thank you for Ares Games for supplying me with the expansion and some cool accessories like this metal box that can hold the cards, sleeves, and so on. As always, if you learned something new or saw something that you like, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's totally free and it's a huge help for me, you guys. Ready to see how it goes? Let the easy playthrough begin. Alright guys, so as always I've obviously skipped setup, but let's quickly go over what we can see right now on the table. So this is going to be the full scenario that combines the basic game and also the expansion Fire and Swords. So we're going to have here basically two teams competing against each other of 6 players. Obviously, it's going to be only me and Mr. Shwet over here, my owl, that is going to play the bad guys. And what we have over here is basically the different groups. So over here, it's going to be Frodo, then the Witch King, Gandalf, Saruman, Aragorn, and Bill Ferny. The vertical decks that we have over here are the draw decks. The decks that we have horizontally are going to be the cycle decks. Over here is what we have currently in our hand. And with your permission, I'm going to put the eliminated cards just completely outside of the frame. Over here to the right side, we have 3 decks of cards. I know that this one we cannot see too well. This is the Paths deck. And over here we have the 2 Battlegrounds. To the left side, we have the different tokens that maybe will come into play at some point. And over here in the middle, we have this card that shows us actually just the turn order. So we're going to start obviously with Frodo as the first player. And we're going to pass this token 1 player at a time so we can always follow on whose turn is it currently. Don't forget, of course, that each player has this token that will allow them to do a specific action that we're going to do a little bit later. Now, obviously, with all of my playthroughs, guys, you might see me take some weird decisions or doing some stupid moves, but it's just because this video is not here at all to give you any kind of strategical advices, just to show you as many cases as possible. So after we have done the setup, that means each player has drew 7 cards and cycled 2 of them, we're going to jump directly into the location step where their starting player, that is Frodo right now, is going to activate 1 battleground and then 1 path. So 1 battleground, since Frodo is the active player, is going to be right over here. Let's see what we have. So we have Dol Armoth. We're going to place it right over here. And since we're activating this battleground, we're going to resolve whatever we have on the card. With Dol Armoth, the Dunedin player, and I probably pronounce these names really badly, so I am sorry about that. The Dunedin player may forsake 1 card to draw 1 card. Okay, so let's understand first of all, what does it mean to forsake? First of all, the Dunedin player is the player that has the deck of that specific faction. In our case, it's going to be the player who's playing Aragorn. Now, what does it mean to forsake? We have basically 3 options. The first option is basically to eliminate any card that you have from your hand. The second option is to eliminate any card that you have in your reserve. And the third option is to eliminate the first card that you have in your draw deck. So again, just to show you how things go, let's say that this player decided to eliminate the first card from their draw deck. We're going to take it out of the game and they're going to draw 1 card into their hand. Now, after we have resolved the battleground, we're going to take 1 path that we have from number 1, since this is the first round. And again, since we're playing with the expansion that we're going to have 1 card on top of that, obviously we have shuffled this deck before, so we're just going to draw the first one and let's place it right over here. The path that we have drawn is along expected party. The Hobbit player, that means the player who's playing Frodo right over here, draws 5 cards, take 1 into their hand and then cycles the rest. Okay, no problem, so let's draw 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 cards, and it doesn't really matter what we're going to choose. I'm just going to take 1 randomly. Let's take this one, going to add it to our hand, and then we're going to cycle the rest of them. And now we're going to move on to the next step, which is the action step, where each player is going to take their own turn. Again, starting with Frodo, so let's just choose a card and play it. The first card that Frodo decides to play is Fatty Bolger, and he's going to play it to his reserve. So when a player is playing a card into the reserve, it comes basically tapped, and that means that this card will not be able to move to a path or to a battleground in this round. Now, when a player is playing a card, they need to cycle another card from their hand. I'm going to again choose one of them, and we're going to place it right over here. And that is it for Frodo, and we're going to move on to the Witch King, which is the player right over here. The card that the Witch King decides to play is the Black Easterling, and they're going to play it directly into the path itself. And also it says, when played, draw one card. So we're going to place this card right over here. As you can see, we can do that because this is round number 1, and over here on this card, we can see that we can play it to a path either between rounds 1 to 3 or between rounds 5 and 9. So there's no problem with that. And after playing this card, we'll need to cycle another card. Let's just take one and place it right over here. And of course, don't forget that we need to execute what you can see on the card itself. So again, we need to draw one card. Let's take it and place it in our hand. And we're moving on to the Gandalf player right over here. The Gandalf player will decide to play Gandalf the White into their reserve. So before we're going to do anything else, we're going to cycle another card. Let's take this one and place it right over here. When we're playing Gandalf the White, which is the same thing if we're going to play the Aragorn card, we need to locate Gandalf the Grey in any place, unless it's of course eliminated, so it's going to be in the cycle deck or even in the draw deck, and eliminate Gandalf the Grey. So I have found this card, Gandalf the Grey. Of course, I'm going to shuffle this deck again, and Gandalf the Grey is going to go out of the game completely. And with that, we're going to move to the next player, which is Saruman right over here. Saruman has decided to play this card right over here that is called Half Orcs and Goblin Men. This card may be played or moved to any battleground. So why is it important that we have here any battleground? Because usually the players will be able to play cards into battleground only if it corresponds to their own faction. So usually we will not be able to play the cards of Saruman of the White Hand over here into a battleground that does not have the same sign. But again, since we have this specific card, we will be able to play it right over here. With that, we're going to cycle this card and we're going to move on to the next player. So let's see what Aragorn is going to play right over here. And Aragorn decides that they will play the card Halbarad into their reserve just like this. We're going to see what's going on with this a little bit later. And they're going to cycle another card from their hand. And moving on to the last player in this turn cycle, that is Bill Fernie. The card that they will decide to play is called Haradrim Mumakil. Again, guys, I'm really sorry for that, you know, I apologize. So they're going to play it to this battleground right over here, and that is starting to really pose a threat to the Fellowship, okay, to the blue player. With that, of course, they're going to cycle another card from their hand, and we're going to go back to Frodo. Now, the blue faction that starts to worry a little bit with what's going on over here are going to play Frodo Baggins from their hand into this path right over here. And going to cycle, of course, one card from their hand and moving on to the Witch King. The Witch King right now doesn't have really a card that is going to affect any path or a battleground, so they're going to play a card into their reserve, and that is going to be the Olog Hai. So they're going to place it tapped just like this, cycling another card from their hand, and we're going to move again to Gandalf. The Gandalf player is going to play Glamdring, which is basically a weapon. This is an item that Gandalf can use. So we're going to play it right over here. And right now, basically, Gandalf the White is the wielder of this card right over here. And of course, don't forget that we need to cycle one card from our hand, moving on to Saruman. Saruman that wants to make sure that the first round is going to be a strong one for the Shadow is going to play Flux of Cribane, right over here to this path right over here, cycling another card from their hand, and we're going to move on to Aragorn. The Aragorn player is going to play Guards of the Citadel into this battlefield right over here. So let's place it, I think we can push it a little bit and place it right over here. And they're going to cycle another card from their hand, no problem, it's going to be this one. And we're going to move on to the last player for the Shadow. Bill is going to play a very interesting card that is called the Last Stroke of Doom. Now, this is an event. So before we're going to resolve what is happening over here, let's already cycle one of the cards from their hand. This is going to stay right over here. And now let's see what's going on over here. Add one attacking token to a shadow army on a battleground. Then for every 2 armies of any faction you eliminate from your reserve, add one more token like this, more to the same army. Since we don't have any armies right now in the reserve, we're not going to execute the second part of this card, but with this event, basically, we will be able to add this token right over here. Let's say that it's going to be to this army. So let's just put it right now over here. And this card, since this is an event, we're going to eliminate this card. That means taking out completely from the game. Moving back to Frodo, let's see what is might be the last action that they're going to take. Now, Frodo right now sees that in this path we have 2 corruption and only 1 shield. So that is really threatening to lose this path. What they're going to do is to play Pippin Took into this path right over here. And they're going to cycle the last card that they have in their hands, moving on again to the Witch King. So the Witch King again doesn't have really something that can affect the battleground. They can choose either right now, since they have only 2 cards in their hand, they can choose to pass their turn, or they can play another card into their reserve. I think this is exactly what they're going to do. They're going to play the Black Uruks right now into their reserve, cycling the last card that they have in their hand, moving on to Gandalf. Now, the Gandalf player has only 1 card in their hand, and that means that if they want to play this card, doesn't matter where, they will have to forsake a card. Since they don't want to do that, they're going to keep this card in their hand, and they're going to pass their turn. Moving on to Saruman. Saruman basically has the same thought, so they're going to pass as well, moving on to Aragorn. The Aragorn player is going to play the Northern Militia into their reserve, cycling the last card in their hand, moving on to the last player of the Shadow. And they also are going to skip their turn. The Frodo player doesn't have any more cards in their hand, and they do not wish to use the text that we have right now over here in the card in the reserve. And I just remind you that even if this card just entered the game, okay, so that means that it's tapped, the power of if in reserve is still activated, so we can still do that, but they choose not to do that. They're going to skip their turn, moving to the Witch King, skipping their turn, moving to Gandalf. And even though they already skipped their turn, since another player has played a card, they can have the possibility to play again. They're going to skip their turn, and let me just make it fast forward. All the players are going to consecutively pass their turn, which means that we have finished the action step and we're going to move on to the combat step. Now, since Frodo is the active player, they're going to decide if to resolve first the combat on the path or on the battleground. It doesn't really make a lot of difference right now over here, but let's start just for the kicks of it with the path that we have right over here. So we can see basically that we have 0 shield on this path, and we're going to have here 2 corruption against 2 shields. So basically the attack has failed, and I remind you that the free people are always protecting, okay, they're always the defender that we have in the path, unlike the battleground that we have over here. And it means that the Shadow has lost this combat over here. Both of these cards are going to be eliminated, but don't forget that because we don't have here any more shields, the corruption will have to affect the 2 cards that we have. Now, basically, a corruption that is touching one of the characters that we have over here supposed to kill them and eliminate these cards completely from the game. But what we have on both of these cards, let's read it first of all with Frodo. If eliminated for any reason, cycle this card instead. Okay, so no problem. We didn't lose completely Frodo Baggins. We're going to place it right over here on the cycle deck. And also with Pippin, if you can see on the bottom part of the card, if eliminated in a path combat, which is exactly what we had right over here, cycle this card instead alongside with any wielded items that we don't have. So both of them basically survive. They're going to go to the cycle deck that we have over here. And the free people are going to take this path card and are going to place it in their possession. just signifying that they have already one victory point. Now over here on the other side, we're going to have something that is a little bit different. So first of all, let's count how many swords, how many attacking icons we have. And we can see that we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that is against the 1, 2, and 3 that we have over here with the free people. And that means that the shadow player is going to win the combat with this card. So obviously when we need to apply these attack symbols, we can see that unfortunately this army is going to be lost. It's going to be completely eliminated from the game. And of course, the attacking cards are also being eliminated. This token can go back to the reserve. These two armies are going to go out from the game completely, are being eliminated. But this card, this battleground, is going to go to the shadow player possession, signifying again that they're having one victory point as well. Let's place it right over here for now. After the combat step, we're going to have the victory check. Obviously, we just started the game, so we can skip this step right over here. And now we're going to go to the draw step. So in the draw step, every free people player is going to draw 3 cards, but pay attention that because the Gandalf player has Gandalf the White in the reserve, again, let's read what it says. While in reserve, draw 1 additional card each draw step. So actually, this player right over here will be able to draw 4 cards. And each shadow player is going to draw 4 cards. Now the starting player token is going to move to the next player. So as you can see, we just flipped it from the free people into the shadow. And the starting player is actually going to be the Witch King, which is the player that we have right over here. Now we're going to move to the location step. So the starting player now is the shadow player. He's going to first of all activate 1 battleground. Let's start with that. And I remind you that since the shadow player is going to be the active player, they're going to draw a battleground from the red deck that we have right over here. Let's see what do we have. Oh, and we actually have over here a skirmish card. When we're drawing a skirmish card like we have over here, that is the Angmar skirmish card, we're going to leave it at the center of the table, just like a normal battleground, and then we're going to activate the first battleground that is stated right over here under the name. Now, we're going to activate it only if it hasn't been already used in a different round. If it was used, then this is not available anymore. We're going to activate the next card that is stated right over here. In this case, it's Rivendell. Even if it means that we're going to take this card from the other player battleground deck. But since this is not the case because it's only the second round, we are going to take Mount Gundabad from over here, this deck. Let's see where we can find it very quickly. And we have it right over here. So now we're going to activate this card. Let's see what does it say. Mount Gundabad, the monstrous player, draws 2 cards. In our case, the monstrous player is going to be Saruman right over here. So they're going to draw 2 more cards into their hand. That is going to be a very dangerous round for the free people. Now, after we have resolved what we can see right over here, we're going to draw 1 path. And since this is the second round, all the path cards that we had with a number 1 on them, we're simply going to take out from the game. We're not going to use them anymore. And we're going to draw 1 at random. Let's see what we have over here. And that is the Barrow Downs. The monsters player draw 2 cards. Oh my God, again, this is pretty crazy, to be honest. So the monsters player is going to draw 2 more cards. Saruman is going to explode this round. And also add 1 corruption to Barrow Whites on this path. So we're going to see what does it mean a little bit later, since we don't have it right now on this card. So again, this is path number 2. Over here we can see the factions that can defend this skirmish card and the factions that can attack it. And the same over here, what can defend and what can attack. And with that, guys, let's start with the first turn of the Witch King. And the Witch King player is not going to waste any time. They're going to play the warrior right over here to this path. So it is a Nazgul, and it's not going to be in reserve. It's going to be placed right over here. So an aggressive start. And of course, don't forget that we need to cycle 1 card from our hand. Moving on to Gandalf. Now, something that I forgot, so I apologize for that. When we finish the round, we can untap all the cards that went into the reserve in the last round, so we can straighten all of them, and now we will be able to move the different cards into a path or into a battleground or a skirmish card just as normal. The Gandalf player is not going to lose any time, and they're going to play the High Elves army card right over here to the skirmish card, just like this. And of course, I remind you that they can play it because the elves are one of the factions that can attack this skirmish card. Moving on to Saruman. Now, definitely Saruman would like to come out and play, so they're going to play Saruman into their reserve, and they're going to cycle another card into their cycle deck. Moving on to Aragorn, let's see what they're going to play. And the Aragorn player actually is not going to play a card from their hand. They're going to take this army and move it right over here to this battleground. Now, when you're moving a card from your reserve to a battleground or to a path, obviously you don't need to cycle a card from your hand. With that, moving to the last player of the Shadow, and they're going to play a card that is called Wildmen of Dunland right over here to this skirmish card. Moving on to Frodo, let's see which card they're going to play. And since they're really not so happy with the cards that they have here right now in their hand, what they're going to do is to use the special ability that we have over here with the Fatty Bulger. And it says, if in your reserve, you may use your action and eliminate this card to draw 3 cards. So eliminating, again, it's completely taking out from the game in order to draw 3 cards into their hand. Moving on, back to the Witch King. The Witch King is going to play the Morgul Blade, which is an item that we'll need to attach to a Nazgul. So first of all, let's cycle the last card that we have in our hand. And over here we can see that the warrior is actually a Nazgul. So there is no problem to add this card right over here, and it's going to be an item that the warrior is wielding right now. Moving on, back to Gandalf. Now, the Gandalf player, instead of taking their normal action, and this is what is interesting with a skirmish card, if on a skirmish card the active player already has a card on this skirmish card from a previous turn, what they will be able to do now is to actually trigger combat in this skirmish card. So it's actually going to play in their favor. Why? Because we have over here 2 attack signs for the free people, and we have only 1 shield for the Shadow. So when we're going to trigger combat over here, basically, of course, both of these cards are being eliminated. That is totally normal. And it means that this skirmish card is going to be resolved. Since it was the free people that successfully attacked this card, we're going to resolve what we have over here. Now again, we can see that the result that we have over here, which says remove 1 corruption, is not going to really affect right now the board, the players or something like that, because we don't have corruption yet, but at least the free people prevented the Shadow from resolving what they would have had if they managed to successfully attack this card. So what we're going to do now is simply take this skirmish card and we're going to eliminate it from the game. So that was kind of a positive thing for the free people, and we're going to move on to Saruman. Saruman that is not really impressed with what happened over here. They're going to try and make sure that they're going to win this battleground. They're going to play this card that is called Goblins of the Misty Mountains onto this battleground right over here, and they're going to cycle 1 of the cards from their hand. With that, moving on to the Aragorn player. The Aragorn player also is not so happy with the cards that they have right now in their hands. What they're going to do is to play an event that is called We Prove the Swifter. So first of all, when we want to play a card, again, we'll need to take 1 card and cycle it. And also it says over here that we need to forsake 1 card and then draw 4 cards. Then you may take an additional action. So just to make sure, we're going to forsake this card in order to draw 1, 2, 3, and 4 cards. And now we're going to take another action. Don't forget, of course, that this event card we're going to eliminate. That means take it out from the game. With their next action, they're going to play Grimborn the Old. Again, guys, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing the names. So first of all, let's take 1 of the cards to cycle. And it says here, when played, each shadow player must forsake one card. So that is pretty strong. Let's place this card right over here. And now each shadow player must forsake one of their cards. Just to make things a little bit simple, let's say that each shadow player just decides to forsake the top card, to eliminate, the top card from their decks. Again, guys, just to make things a little bit more simple. So that was quite of a strong turn, and we're going to move on to the last player of the shadow. Bill would like to play Ted Sandyman into this path right over here. Let's place this card just like this. I remind you there's no problem because this character can be played at turns 1 or 2 to this path. So there's no problem because this is path 2. And of course we're going to cycle one of the cards just like this. Moving on to Frodo. Frodo is going to play Rosie Cotton into their reserve, and they're going to cycle another card. Moving on back to our starting player, that is the Witch King. Now the Witch King again doesn't have any more cards in their hand, but they don't wish to pass just yet. What they're going to do is to use this card that we played before, right? The Mogul Blade, and it says, if on a path, which is exactly what we have right over here, you may use your action and eliminate this card to add 1 corruption. So we're going to take this corruption and we're not going to add it actually to the path. We're going to add this corruption to the scoring area of the shadow, which is right over here a little bit off screen. We're going to go back to it a little bit later. And of course, we're going to eliminate this card. That means take it out completely from the game. Now you can understand that if the 3 people would have resolved the skirmish card after this corruption was added, then they would have been able to take out this corruption, but I guess they couldn't take that risk, and that is completely okay. Moving on right now to the Gandalf player. Gandalf is going to play High Elves right over here into their reserve, and they're going to cycle one of their cards. Moving to Saruman, let's see what they're going to do. They're going to play the Balrog of Moria right over here into their reserve. So they're doing some good preparations, and they're going to cycle one card from their hand. With that, we're going to move on to the Aragorn player. Let's see what is their next move. They're going to play the Knights of Dol Amroth into their reserve, cycling their last card in their hands. Moving back to Bill, let's see what will be their action. They're going to play the Mirkwood Skirmishers into their reserve, and they're going to cycle the last card in their hand. Moving back to Frodo, and what they're going to do is to use actually the Rosie Cotton card. So it says, if in reserve, which is exactly the case right over here, you may use your action to cycle this card to either take Sam or Frodo from your cycle pile into your hand or draw one card. So I think this is exactly what they're going to do. They're going to try and take Frodo, that if you remember is already in our cycle deck. Let's see, so it's this one right over here. We're going to place it in their hands, and we're going to put Rosie Cotton in the cycle deck just like this. So we did this action, and we're going to move on. The Witch King has nothing to do, and they would like actually to show you something with this token right over here. So as an action, we can take this ring token, and once per game, we can discard this ring token, so completely take it out from the game, in order to draw 2 cards. If we're not going to use this token until the end of the game, it will be worth 1 victory point. So again, guys, no strategical advices over here, just to show you as many things as possible. So that was the action of the Witch King. Moving on to Gandalf. For now, the Gandalf player that consulted the Frodo player decides to pass. Maybe they're going to do something in the next turn. Moving on to Saruman. Saruman decides to play the Cave Troll card into their reserve, and they're going to cycle another card from their hand, so they have still left 1 card in their hand. Moving on to Aragorn. Aragorn doesn't have any more cards in their hand. What they are going to do is to take this card right over here, and they're going to place it on this path. We can do that because we can play it either on round 2 or 3, and we do have here a path 2. Moving on back to Bill, so I think what they want to do is actually to pass. What Frodo is going to do is to play Frodo Baggins right over here. They're going to cycle one of their cards. So moving on to the Witch King, they're going to play this card that is called the Hunter. It is another Nazgul to this path right over here. And they're going to cycle the last card from their hand. Back to Gandalf. They're going to play a card that is an item. So it's called the Elven Cloak. Let's cycle this card already. And we can attach this item to either a hobbit or an elf. Now, obviously, a hobbit is from a different faction, but it really doesn't matter. We can do that. With the Elven Cloak, it says, if the wielder is eliminated during a path combat, cycle it instead along with any wielded items. So it's really not so bad, especially because we have here another shield icon for a path, and we're going to attach it to Frodo right now. And we're going to move again to Saruman. Saruman decides to use the text that we have right over here on the cave troll, and it says, if in reserve, which is exactly our case, you may use your action and eliminate this card, so each free people's player must forsake one card. So what we're going to do is to eliminate this card, and let's see what the Aragorn player will decide to do. They're going to eliminate this card that they have in their reserve. Moving back to Frodo, they're going to take the top card from their draw deck and eliminate it. And the same thing is going to be performed by Gandalf. So we have resolved this action, and we're going to move again over here to Aragorn, to their turn. They're going to pass. Also, this player is going to pass as well, back to Frodo. And we can see that we have here 3 skull icons and 3 shields. So actually, Frodo player is kind of calm with what they have right now, but they can still not pass because they have 3 cards, which is more than their limit. I think what they're going to do is to play Gimli right over here. So we can do that again because we have here the sign of the dwarves faction, the same over here. We're going to cycle one of our cards, and it says when played, you may take Dwarven Axe from your cycle pile into your hand. But actually we already have this card in our hand, so we're just going to ignore this text. Moving on to the Witch King, they're going to pass. Gandalf is going to pass as well. Saruman is going to pass, Aragorn, and also Bill. So back to the Frodo player, and they're going to actually play the last card from their hand to take this Dwarven Axe and to attach it to Gimli. So we can place it just like this. But again, I remind you that if you're decided to play the last card from your hand, you have to forsake another card. They're simply going to take the card that they have right over here and cycle it. And this is something that I failed to mention, so I'm sorry about that. But before you're actually eliminating a card from the top of your deck, you have to take a look at it, because some cards that you're eliminating from the top of your deck are actually being cycled into the deck. It depends on the text on the card itself. So I'm sorry I didn't mention it before, but off the screen, what I did is to take a look at it just to make sure that this case didn't happen, and I just eliminated this card. So I apologize, and we're going to move on. So again, guys, all the players right now are going to pass their turn. So that means that we have finished the action step, and we're going to go to the combat step. Since we have over here the Witch King, which is the active player, they're going to decide where they would like to start combat. Let's start what we have over here with this battleground. So here, let's first of all count the shields. We have 1, 2, and 3 shields. And we have over here 1, 2, 3, 4 swords icon. So obviously the 3 people are going to win this combat. That actually means that unfortunately Gimli is being eliminated alongside with the armies that we have right over here. And also, of course, this card of the shadow is being eliminated as well. But at least it means that the 3 people have won this card. We're going to place it in their scoring area, and that will worth for them 1 victory point. Moving over here to the path, what we can see that we have 1, 2, 3 skulls. We don't have here any shields. That means that the corruption is going to immediately affect the characters themselves. So 1 is going to be applied over here. So this card is going to be eliminated. And also Frodo and what they have over here, their equipment, the Elf's Cloak, are going to stop the two other corruptions that we have. So all of these cards are going to be eliminated. Now, in general, again, these cards we should have eliminated, but again, if Frodo is eliminated for any reason, it's going to be cycled. And also the Elven Cloak, if the Wielder is eliminated during a path combat, cycle it instead. So no problem with that with the wielded items. Just pay attention that while the Frodo card is going to be cycled into the Frodo deck right over here, this card that actually belongs to the elves is going to be cycled over here with the Gandalf player. It's important to pay attention to that, but at least the free people managed to protect this path, so this is going to be added to their scoring area as well, and it's worth to them 2 victory points. Now that we have finished the combat step, we're going to go to the victory check. So let's just see what we have over here. And we have over here for the free people 4 victory points, and for the shadow we have only 2. How come 2? We have 1 from the battleground of the first round, and also we have over here this corruption. So a corruption is 1 victory point, they have 2. Obviously the free people don't have 10 victory points more than the shadow player, and we're going to move on to the draw step. So again, we're going to do exactly what we did in the last turn. Don't forget that Gandalf, the white card right over here, is actually allowing this player to draw 1 more card. And also Saruman over here says that while in reserve, draw 1 additional card each draw step. So instead of 4 cards for this player, they're actually going to draw 5 cards, which is quite a lot. Now, don't forget, like I did in the last round, before moving on to the next round, we're going to untap all the characters and armies that entered the game in the previous round, and we're going to start a new round with Gandalf being actually the starting player. And that is it, you guys. I think I'm going to stop the video right over here. I don't know if there is a reason to continue one more. We saw basically how a round goes, how to play characters, the different armies to your reserve or to the battleground. We saw some content from a Fire and Swords expansion with the skirmish cards, how to activate it, etc. And I think that if you understood this video, it's going to be super easy for you to table this game, even for the long scenario of 9 rounds, and you'll be able to take it from there. Thank you very much for watching. I truly appreciate it. Take care, and I'll see you next time.